the previous chapter, we noted that vertical division of the power among the different levels of government is one of the major forms of power sharing in the modern democracy. So in this chapter, we will be discussing about the commonly referred term, which is federalism. We begin by describing what is federalism in general terms. In the rest of the chapter, we will be dealing with the theory and practice of federalism in India. It also focuses on the federal constitutional provisions which are followed by an analysis of the policies and politics that have strengthened federalism in practice in our country. Introduction to federalism. First of all, what is a concept of federalism, or what is federalism? If you have studied in our constitution carefully, you will see it calls India as the Union of States. This statement is what gives our country a federal structure. Let us learn more about federalism, why we call India as a quasi-federal country. Now, if you recall properly, one of the key changes that were made in the Constitution of Belgium was to reduce the powers of the central government. So where the authority is shared with the regional government. The regional governments existed in Belgium ever earlier have seen their roles and powers like this. But all these powers were given to these governments and could not be withdrawn anymore by the central government. The change that took place in 1993 was that the regional governments were given constitutional powers and there was no longer dependent on the central government. Thus, Belgium shifted from a unitary form of government to a federal form of government. Sri Lanka continues to practice the unitary system where the national government has all the powers, which the Tamil leaders felt that they were denied certain rights, they were not given importance. Now, if you move on to federalism, federalism is a system of government in which the power is divided between the central government and the state governments, or federalism as it is a core system where the dual machinery of government functions. Generally under federalism there are two levels of governments. One is a central authority which looks after the major affairs of the government. The other is more of a local government which looks after the day-to-day functioning and activities of their regions. Now, in the sense, federations are contrasted with unitary governments. Why federations are contrasted with the unitary government? You can see the picture here. In the federalism, we always have a balance between the union government and the states. The central government can pass an order on the provisions of the local government. But in federal system, the central government cannot order the state government to do something, whereas the state government has powers of its own for which it is not answerable to the central government. Both these governments are separately answerable to people. What are the key features of federalism? As federalism defines the system of government in which the powers are divided and shared by the central or the federal government and its regional or state government. The best way to comprehensively understand federal system is to learn about its features. These characteristics combine to reflect the true sense or the essence must be approved by all the levels of the governments. Again, we have to remember the basic fundamental that there are two levels of government with separate areas of jurisdiction and separate duties allotted to each one. Yet, there is still a possibility that a conflict may arise between the two. Well, in a federal state, it will fall upon the courts or rather the judiciary to resolve the conflicts. The courts must have the power to interfere in such a situation and reach a resolution in case if there is any dispute between the union government and the regional governments, or between the regional states versus the other states. While there is power sharing between the two levels of government, there should also be a system in place for revenue sharing. Both the levels of governments should have their own autonomous revenue streams, which means they are financially independent from each other. Because if one such government depends on the other for funds to carry out its basic duties, it does not give the real sense of autonomous nature in the federal system. Now, we have different types of federal structures. The federal system, as mentioned clearly, has two or more sets of governments. Now, the exact balance of power between the central and the states varies from one federation to another federation. So, we have two types of federal governments. One is coming together federation, which is followed in the countries like USA, Switzerland, and Australia. The next one is holding together federation. Examples: India, Spain, and Belgium. In the coming together federation type, this is an independent states come together on their own to form a bigger or larger unit. While in the holding together type, it is the large country which is divided between the constituent states and the union government. They can increase, when coming to the coming together federation, they can increase their security by pooling sovereignty and retaining identity. So here they can share their sovereign authority but retain their own identity. But when it comes to holding together, the central government tends to be more powerful versus with the states, or when compared with the states. The examples which follow the coming together federation are USA, Switzerland, and Australia, while holding together type examples are India, Spain, and Belgium. So these two are the most practiced types of federations in the present century, which are also running very successfully. Now, what makes India a federal country? What makes India a federal country? To begin with, as India a federal state, but not once in the constitution is the word federation ever mentioned. Instead, what is said is that India is a union of states. Actually, many historians believe that India is a quasi-federal country. It means it is a federal state with some features of unitary government. Let us see the reasons why they call it like this. The Constitution of India has essentially prescribed a federal state of government. As we already know that we have several levels of governments. The government at the center with the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Then various state governments with Vidhan Sabhas and Vidhan Parishads. And finally we have the municipal corporations and the panchayats, which are the forms of that there are two levels of government with separate areas of jurisdiction and separate duties allotted to each one. Yet there is still a possibility that a conflict may arise. We have observed clearly in our country, India, we are formed by holding together federation. The holding together federation do not give equal powers to its constituent units or states. In Indian Union, all the states do not have identical or equal powers. Some states enjoy a special status. Like for example, in Jammu and Kashmir, it has its own constitution. Many provisions of the Indian constitution are not applicable without the state assembly approval there. Indians who are not permanent residents of Jammu and Kashmir cannot buy a land or house in Jammu and Kashmir region. Similarly, certain special provisions exist for some other states as well. Few of them, like for example in the areas where Indian Union enjoys very little power in some units. These are areas which are too small to become an independent states, but which could not be merged with any of the existing states. Few of such regions, for example, are like Chandigarh, Lakshadweep, capital city of Delhi, are called Union Territories. These territories do not have the powers of the state. The central government has special powers in running these areas. This sharing of power between the union government and the state government is a basic to the structure of the constitution. It is also not easy to make changes to this power sharing arrangement. The parliament cannot on its own change these arrangements. Any change to it has to be first passed by both the houses of the parliament with the 2/3 of majority, and then it has to be ratified by the legislatures of at least half of the total states. The judiciary also plays a key role in overseeing the implementation of the constitutional provisions and procedures. In case of any disputes, the division of powers, the High Courts and Supreme Court make a decision. The union and the state governments have the power to raise resources by levying taxes in order to carry on the government and the responsibilities assigned to each of them. Now, what or how is federalism practiced in our country? The first issue what we got is, as soon as the constitution came into existence and India became a republican country, if the federal experiment has succeeded in India, it is not merely because the clearly laid out constitutional provisions. The real success of federalism in India can be attributed to the nature of the democratic politics in our country. This ensured the spirit of federation and federalism. Respect for diversity, desire for living together became shared ideals in our country. The first major challenge what we had was linguistic states. The creation of the linguistic states was the first and the major test for the democratic politics in our country. If you look at the political map, when it began its journey as a democracy in 1947 until 2014, we have 29 states. Many old states have vanished. Many new states have been created. Areas, boundaries, names of the states have been changed. In 1947, the boundaries of several old states of India were changed in order to create new states. This was done to ensure that people who spoke the same language lived in the same state. Some states were created not on the basis of language, but to recognize the differences based on culture, ethnicity, or geography. Such states are like Nagaland, Uttarakhand, and Jharkhand. So, the first test for India started in 1956, when the demand for the formation of the states on the basis of the language was raised. Some national leaders feared that it would lead to the disintegration of the country, but the central government resisted the linguistic states for quite some time. But the experience has shown that the formation of the linguistic states has actually made India more united and also made administration easier. Now, moving on, what is the next challenge that Indian democracy has faced? The language policy. The second test for the Indian Federation is the language policy. Our country and our constitution did not give the status of national language to any one language. Many of you may get a doubt that Hindi was identified as the official language, but Hindi is the mother tongue of only about 40% of Indians. Therefore, there were many safeguards to protect other languages. Besides Hindi, there are 21 other languages recognized in the scheduled languages by the Constitution that a candidate in the examinations conducted by the union government or central government positions may opt to take the examination in any of the languages which are mentioned in the list. States too have their own official languages. Much of the government work takes place in the official language of the concerned state. Unlike Sri Lanka, the leaders of the country adopted a very cautious attitude in spreading the use of Hindi. According to our constitution, the use of English for official purpose was to stop in 1965. However, many non-speaking states demanded the use of English to be continued. In Tamil Nadu, this movement took a violent form. The central government responded by agreeing to continue the use of English language along with Hindi language for official purposes. Many critics think that the solution favored English speaking elite. Promotion of Hindi continues to be the official policy of the Government of India. Promotion does not mean that the central government can superimpose or put on us Hindi on the states which are not speaking Hindi. There is a flexibility shown by the Indian political leaders and helped out to avoid a situation similar to that of Sri Lanka. Like this, India passed the second test, that is the language policy. Let's see what is the third test. Center-state relations. They are always tensed. Restructuring the center-state relations is one more way in which federalism has been strengthened in practice. How the constitutional arrangements for sharing power in reality depends to a very large extent on how the ruling parties and the leaders follow these arrangements. For a long time, the same party ruled both the center and in the states or in most of the states. This meant that the state governments did not exercise their rights as autonomous federal units. But as the time passed, the parties changed. Many state governments came into existence which are different from the central government. So those days they started the issues. And the entire scenario got completely changed in 1990s. There is a period which saw the rise of the regional political parties in many states of the country. This is also called the beginning of the era of coalition governments. At the center, since no single political party got a clear majority in Lok Sabha, the major national parties had to enter into an alliance with many political parties, including several regional parties, to form a government at the center. This led to a new culture of power, sharing the respect and autonomy for the state governments. This trend was supported by major judgments of the Supreme Court that it made it difficult for the central government to dismiss the state government, which is a normal routine procedure depending on the center-state relations. This is also an arbitrary manner. Thus, federal power sharing is more effective today than it was in the earlier years after the constitution came into existence. We also have the fourth challenge, that is, let us see it, decentralization in India. How the concept of decentralization came into our system. When the power is taken away from the center and the state governments and is given to the local governments, it is called decentralization. The basic idea behind decentralization is that there are a large number of problems and issues which are best settled at the local levels. People have better knowledge of problems in their localities. They also have better ideas on where to spend money and how to make things more efficiently. Besides at the local level, it is possible for the people to directly participate in decision making. This helps to inculcate the habit of democratic participation. Local governments is the best way to realize one important principle of democracy, namely local self-government. A major step which took for the decentralization was in 1992. The constitution was amended to make a three-tier of democracy more powerful and effective. In the constitution, it has become mandatory to conduct regular elections, the local bodies. Seats are reserved for the elected bodies and the executive heads in these particular institutions for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe and other backward classes. And it also clearly mentioned that at least 1/3 of the positions should be reserved for women. An independent institution called the State Election Commission has been created in each state to conduct panchayat and municipal elections. State governments are required to share powers and revenue with the local bodies, and the nature of the sharing varies from state to state. So the local governance structure goes right up to the district level, and a few gram panchayats are grouped together to form what is usually called a panchayat samiti, a block or a mandal. The members of these representatives bodies are elected by all the panchayat members in the area. All the panchayat samitis or mandals in a district together constitute the Jilla Parishad. Most of the members of the Jilla Parishad are elected. Members of the Lok Sabha, MLAs of the district, and some other officials of the district level bodies are also its members. Jilla Parishad chairperson is the political head of the Jilla Parishad. Similarly, local government bodies existed in the urban areas as well. Municipalities are set up in towns. Big cities are constituted in municipal corporations. Both municipalities and the municipal corporations are controlled by elected bodies consisting of people's representatives. Municipal chairperson is the political head of the municipality, while for the municipal corporation, such as officers, is called mayor. So, the new system of local governance is the largest experiment in democracy conducted anywhere in the world. Why? Because there are about 36 lakh elected representatives in the panchayats and the municipalities all over the country. The number is bigger than population of many countries in the world. Constitutional status for the local government has helped to deepen the democracy in our country. It also increased women representation and voice in our democracy. At the same time, there are many difficulties. While elections are held regularly and enthusiastically, Grama Sabhas are not held regularly. Most state governments have not transferred the significant powers to the local governments, nor have given them adequate resources. we are thus still a long way for realizing the ideal of self-government. These are the major challenges which India has been tested and passed with distinction levels. So with this, we come to the end of Federalism chapter in grade 10. Thank you.